Captain Dorian Hale stood by himself in the darkness as soon as the transmission came through, knowing that everything was going to burn. Observing the encrypted holo feed flicker to life on the bridge of the Watchful Dawn in the opposite end of the room were admirals of galactic leaders with pale, pointed features. Each minister's envoy tries and fails to conceal the dread that underlies their shouts, overlapped in terror as they wore jeweled robes and flashing rank insignias. I found it difficult to keep up with the translator's burst of a dozen languages. How did the Terran and then the ship's feasible breach the fundamental accords? The Senate Supreme Marshal leaned forward, his visage icy with rage. Captain Hale, you're told to Dorian didn't flinch when you explained that his uniform was simple black, without any gold or silk. Only one sleeve of matte composite cloth was fire-scarred. He had earned every tear theatrical way. His voice was low, and he didn't even say, "What Marshal Yanoful, well, that the aliens destroyed the fleet you just revealed to the ships of the Kepler Expanse, which is against all weaponry systems that disregard technological treaty shields. That shouldn't exist. Let them rage because he had waited and we couldn't follow him. Due to known physics cloaking years for this occasion because for many years, people had been treated like trash, tolerated, ridiculed, and blockaded in their due to trade leftovers. A small portion of the Orion Arm prevented access to essential shipyards that are intimidated by haughty foreign rulers and their conceited supremacy. They felt that people were too archaic to keep up, too sentimental and feeble. They were unaware that people had given up attempting to capture instead. There were 100 secret shipyards under dead moons, under the irradiated remnants of ancient Earth. Dark labs rescued technology ever set aside from wreckage that no one believed they could comprehend. And now the evidence had reached the Kepler expansion, a neutral trade zone, 3 hours ago. 30 human warships had revealed black holes that gleamed with unidentified gravitic metals, rail cannons, particle lances, and drives that go much above galactic standards that could battle cruisers. With half the typical range of punch holes were all observed, disseminated and ingrained in each Senate information web node. Dorian had observed the martial smirk from Galaxy. You run the risk of going to war with the core planets, which will result in penalties and retaliation. And he grinned just a little bit now, so you should be cautious. Which room erupted in yelling as you sent fleets because the ones you are aware of aren't the only ones we have constructed. The heavy door behind him hissed open, and he suppressed the sound. Commander Trent entered, scarred. A man with a square jaw who had suffered too much blood in frigid space combatant remarked, "They're going crazy." As he heard Senate Station's illuminate frown, he believed that we would be a century behind. Not 20 from Jupiter to real. Dorian nodded ahead as his eyes strayed to the star map above the instruction. They made us desperate, he said, describing a variety of threatening areas outlined in scarlet. He turned to Trent and muttered, "Now they'll see what desperation builds. The fleet is fully prepared for battle. There are no more shadows." Trent smiled broadly. At last, the sirens started to go off over the watchful morning, and a dozen concealed black warships, human fleets, stirring drives and prepped, warmed armaments. And every panic in the alien metropolis started to spread because mankind had constructed ships that weren't supposed to be there. And now they were coming silently from behind asteroid belts where Earth's dark warships and gas giants came slickly out of the dark moons of long-forgotten systems. Geometric pieces of hardened tungsten and matte obsidian without gaudy banner ceremonial markings. Our only bare, cruel machines created with the sole intent of Dorian Hale, the galaxy's bleeding captain, stood in the observation bay with the others. It was one thing to watch the fleet form up in the void from the vigilant dawn. Create these ships covertly, in order to test them in covert battles or deep space drilling. But now that they were visible, the galaxy was aware of their presence. Commander Trent's approach to data would soon be felt by the Cosmos. Tactical brief, pad in hand. Sir, let's shave all 5 fighting groups. Revenant, Eclipse, Wraith, and Ghost deployed. 40 to capital class hulls, 110 support craft cloaks, and wings that hold drives in preparation. 4th Corps. Trent's mouth twisted in disgust. Mass mobilization. In response to the lengthy jump, the Senate directed the Kylan Armada, the 9th Drexian Shield, the 4th Major Fleet, and Dorian took in the information that the Vashan War priests were fighting as 5-1. With heavy ships, expected worse, the Corps' conceit served them well. They continued to doubt that people could actually defeat it. Trent remarked coldly, "War isn't yet. They're coming to make an example of us. With a display of force, they can intimidate us." Dorian's gaze narrowed, discovered that terror had started to shift in the Galactic Senate's magnificent spire. New intelligence findings were yelled by conspiracy ambassadors in a dozen voices, flashed across the central holotable, indicating unverified reports of odd human inert beliefs were formerly held by ships around ancient ruins, near ancient derelicts. They must have stolen precursors tech, there is no other explanation. One admiral yelled as the fear-mongering went out of control. Another muttered, "They're bluffing." In a brittle voice, basic creatures a desperate Supreme Marshal's visage is icy. "Show us we crush them now or they infect the balance of power," spoke above the cacophony. The reality is that it doesn't matter how they constructed them. He sent the fleet's total when he slapped his clawed hand on the table. Some senators realized that the more intellectual ones were assaulting now, so they authorized the engagement. Was not just a police action anymore, it was war, and wars used to start infrequently. Complied with the orderly bounds of the law on the watchful morning. Dorian stood all right. He said in a firm voice before his top officers, "You know what? They're coming. This means that the cloak and dagger are no longer used." He allowed it to sink in. This is war, preparation. Men and women with hardened faces who had already witnessed too much nodded around the table. On paper, our fleets are outnumbered and outgunned, but a paper victory never wins a war. Key the tactical display. We have 3 advantages that they can't match: our gravitic skip, one of our drive S, they anticipate sluggish battleship duels, so drives can move themselves within conflict space. We'll dance around them till our core fleets haven't engaged in combat with weaponry like our rail and lance rays, which can penetrate their shields. He leaned forward. They're accustomed to tech, and 3 are thinking. We fight to win in ceremonial war honor duels and set-piece battles. But there is no honor in not feeling guilty about outwitting your adversary. He examined every officer in the you take whatever necessary action, you murder what you have to, and you cause them to bleed till they didn't underestimate us ever again. Trent said grimly. Dorian's smile was colder as he asked for permission to launch preemptive strikes. The initial conflict started at the boundaries of the Kepler expanse a few hours later. A vanguard group of 12 cruisers and escorts arrived, with a Drexian shield squadron, transmitting commands to disarm, stand down, and submit to the core authority. But Dorian did not respond. 3 Wraith-class stealth frigates and Vigilant Dawn emerged in perfect form. Asian, point blank. The 4th Directions were able to fire hypervelocity tungsten rail weapons and ray shields, slugs, ripped through both flesh and alloy, and the lead Drexian flagship broke apart. The survivors attempted to shout, but the crew had little time to do so in a single pass. They had already been flanked by cloaked human corvettes. Firing Gravitas in 20 minutes, torpedoes tore drive cores apart and smashed holes. There was no harm or repulsiveness to the Drexian squadron.